The fateful encounter. Olivia Reed's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the display card beneath the ancient Greek amphora, the centerpiece of tonight's fundraising exhibit. After 6 years as a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Classical Antiquities Department, this was her moment to shine. The Treasures of the Aegean exhibition was her brainchild, and tonight's gala would secure the funding needed to expand the collection. Everything looks perfect, Ms. Reed whispered her assistant Prisha, handing her a glass of water. The board members are arriving now. Olivia smoothed her modest navy dress, purchased second-hand but impeccably tailored. Unlike many of her colleagues who dressed to impress the wealthy patrons, Olivia preferred to let the artifacts speak for themselves. Her shoulder-length chestnut hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, her only adornment a pair of small pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. "Is he coming?" Olivia couldn't help asking. Prishaw nodded knowingly. Vincent Blackwood's team confirmed this morning, first public appearance in nearly a year. Vincent Blackwood, the enigmatic founder of Nexus Technologies, was notoriously private despite his company's global success. At 35 he'd revolutionized quantum computing, then virtually disappeared from public life. His philanthropic foundation, however, was one of the museum's biggest potential donors. "Remember, he's just another patron," Olivia told herself, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. The grand hall filled with Manhattan's elite, champagne flowing as freely as the classical music that drifted through the air. Olivia moved between groups, passionately explaining the significance of each artifact, carefully avoiding checking the entrance for Blackwood's arrival. 3 hours into the event, Olivia retreated to a quiet corner near the ancient Greek jewelry display. The event was a success, but Blackwood hadn't appeared. Perhaps it was for the best she could focus on the other donors without distraction. The craftsmanship of these pieces suggests they weren't merely decorative, but symbolic of status, came a quiet, deep voice from behind her. Olivia turned to find a tall man studying the gold filigree necklace in the display case. He wore a simple black suit with no tie, his dark hair slightly tucked. There was something oddly familiar about him, though she couldn't place it. "You have a good eye," she replied. "Many miss the practical aspects of ancient jewelry. I've always been interested in the functional rather than the purely aesthetic," he said, his gaze meeting hers. His eyes were a startling shade of blue-gray, intense yet somehow gentle. Before she could respond, the lights flickered, then plunged the room into darkness. Gasps echoed through the hall as emergency lights struggled to activate. Olivia felt a hand grip her arm to steady her as someone else bumped into her from behind, propelling her forward. In the confusion, her face collided with what she assumed was the stranger's shoulder, but as her lips accidentally brushed against what felt unmistakably like someone else's mouth, the emergency lights finally flickered on. She found herself inches away from the man's face, their momentary and accidental contact frozen in time as camera flashes suddenly exploded around them. The stranger's eyes widened in recognition, or was it alarm? "Ms. Reed," came Prisha's urgent whisper as she appeared at her side. "That's Vincent Blackwood." Olivia's heart stopped as realization dawned. She had just accidentally kissed the most elusive billionaire in New York, and dozens of phones had captured the moment. Media firestorm by dawn, Olivia's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She stared at the screen in horror as notifications flooded in text messages from colleagues, missed calls from her mother, and worst of all, dozens of news alerts with variations of the same headline. "Mystery woman locks lips with tech titan. Who is Olivia Reed?" Her stomach clenched as she clicked on one article, immediately confronted with a grainy but unmistakable photo of herself and Vincent Blackwood in what appeared to be an intimate moment. The flash of the emergency lights had created a romantic glow around them, making the accidental contact look deliberate and passionate. "This can't be happening," she whispered, scrolling through the comments below the article. "Gold digger found her. Target another curator curating a billionaire boyfriend. Bet she planned the blackout too." Her phone rang. Again the museum director, Eleanor Whitfield. "Olivia, I need you in my office now." 40 minutes later, Olivia sat across from Eleanor and 2 grim-faced board members. The tension in the room was suffocating. "The publicity is problematic," Eleanor said carefully. "The museum prides itself on professionalism and decorum." "It was an accident," Olivia explained, her voice barely steady. "The lights went out. Someone bumped into me nevertheless," interrupted Bernard Hoffman, the eldest board member. "This appears calculated. Mr. Blackwood is an intensely private individual and a crucial donor. We cannot appear to be orchestrating romantic entanglements." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. "You think I planned this? What we think doesn't matter," Eleanor replied. "Public perception does. We're placing you on administrative leave until this blows over." As Olivia cleaned out her desk, Prisha slipped her a sympathetic note. "This isn't right. Call me if you need anything." Outside the museum, Olivia pulled her coat tighter against the autumn chill, keeping her head down as she hurried past a cluster of photographers. 6 years of dedicated work, a stellar academic record, countless late nights researching and writing, all overshadowed by a 3-second accident. At her small Brooklyn apartment, Olivia collapsed onto her couch, finally allowing tears to fall. Her phone buzzed with another news alert. Blackwood Industries issues, no comment on museum incident. CEO cancels all public appearances. Perfect. Now she'd scared off the museum's biggest potential donor too. Meanwhile, across the city in a minimalist penthouse overlooking Central Park, Vincent Blackwood stared at the same article on his tablet, his expression unreadable. "We need to release a statement immediately," insisted Diane Porter, his head of public relations. "Something brief that distances you from the situation," perhaps suggesting she took advantage of the power outage. Vincent's jaw tightened. "Absolutely not. With respect, sir, your silence is being interpreted as confirmation. The speculation is running wild. Your privacy is being violated again. So is hers," he said quietly, scrolling through the increasingly vicious comments about Olivia. "Who is she, exactly?" His chief of staff, Marcus Chen, produced a file. Olivia Reed, 29, Ph.D. in classical archaeology from Columbia. Impressive academic record. Joined the museum 6 years ago as an assistant curator. Promoted twice since then. Led the acquisition of several significant pieces. Responsible for the current exhibition. Vincent paused on a photo of Olivia giving a lecture, her face animated with passion as she discussed an ancient artifact. Something about her expression triggered a distant memory. "I've seen her before," he murmured. "Unlikely, sir. She's not in your usual circles." "No, I have. Years ago." Vincent stood abruptly. "I need time to think. Cancel my meetings for the week. And Marcus, I want a complete background on Dr. Reed. Professional achievements, personal interests, everything. Sir, with respect." Fueling this connection that could damage your reputation further. Vincent looked out at the city skyline. "My reputation has always been based on seeing the truth when others don't. I won't participate in destroying someone's career over nothing." As the days passed, Olivia watched helplessly as her professional reputation unraveled. Former colleagues stopped returning calls. A prestigious journal rescinded an offer to publish her research. Social media buzzed with theories about her calculated seduction of New York's most eligible bachelor. On the 7th day after the incident, as rain pattered against her windows, her doorbell rang. Expecting another delivery of hate mail, Olivia opened the door to find Vincent Blackwood standing there, soaked from the rain, holding no umbrella, dressed in jeans and a simple gray sweater. He looked nothing like his polished public persona or even the man from the gala. His eyes held something she hadn't noticed before, a quiet determination. "Dr. Reed," he said softly, "I believe we have a conversation long overdue." Hidden truths. Olivia froze, one hand still on the doorknob. Vincent Blackwood, the man whose accidental encounter had demolished her career, stood dripping on her welcome mat, looking more like a lost traveler than a tech mogul worth billions. "How did you find my address?" she finally managed. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I built a global security system used by governments. Finding an address wasn't difficult." "That's not reassuring," she replied, but stepped aside to let him in. Her small apartment, with its overflowing bookshelves and mismatched furniture, suddenly felt impossibly cramped. Vincent's gaze traveled over her collection of archaeology books and the half-finished pottery restoration project on her dining table. "You live your passion," he observed. "I used to work in my passion," Olivia corrected, folding her arms. "Now I'm professionally radioactive." "Why are you here, Mr. Blackwood?" "Your PR team finally crafted the perfect statement to finish burying me." Hidden truths. Olivia froze, one hand still on the doorknob. Vincent Blackwood, the man whose accidental encounter had demolished her career, stood dripping on her welcome mat, looking more like a lost traveler than a tech mogul worth billions. "How did you find my address?" she finally managed. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I built a global security system used by governments. Finding an address wasn't difficult." "That's not reassuring," she replied, but stepped aside to let him in. Her small apartment, with its overflowing bookshelves and mismatched furniture, suddenly felt impossibly cramped. Vincent's gaze traveled over her collection of archaeology books and the half-finished pottery restoration project on her dining table. "You live your passion," he observed. "I used to work in my passion," Olivia corrected, folding her arms. "Now I'm professionally radioactive." "Why are you here, Mr. Blackwood?" "Your PR team finally crafted the perfect statement to finish burying me." He shook his head, droplets of rain falling from his dark hair. "May I?" He gestured to a kitchen chair. Once seated, Vincent looked directly into her eyes. 7 years ago, there was an archaeological conference at Columbia University, a panel discussion on ethical acquisition of antiquities. Olivia's brow furrowed. "I remember that conference. I was still a graduate student. There was an incident. A prominent collector, Harold Westfield, was boasting about his private collection of Mesopotamian tablets. He implied they had been acquired through questionable channels." Recognition dawned in Olivia's eyes. "Someone challenged him publicly." "A student," you, Vincent confirmed. "You stood up in a room full of powerful people and called him out for participating in the black market trade that funds terrorism and destroys cultural heritage. You risked your future career to speak truth to power." Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks. "I was young and foolish." "You were right, and brave." Vincent leaned forward. I was in that audience, Dr. Reed. I'd been invited as a potential donor to the archaeology department. Your courage that day changed how I structured my foundation's giving. We now fund ethical archaeology and repatriation efforts worldwide. Olivia sank into the chair opposite him, memories flooding back. You were there. I don't remember seeing you. I'm good at blending in when I want to, better at disappearing entirely. His expression grew serious. The night of the gala wasn't our first meeting, at least not for me. I'd followed your career since that conference. When your exhibition proposal crossed my desk, I recognized your name immediately. So you came to the gala because of me? Olivia asked, disbelief coloring her voice. Partially. I admired your work. I wanted to see if you were still the same person who had impressed me years ago. He ran a hand through his damp hair. The power outage and what followed was genuinely accidental, but what's happened to you since is unforgivable. Olivia's throat tightened. Why didn't you just issue a statement saying it was an accident? Because a simple denial wouldn't have been enough. The narrative was already written. Ambitious curator seduces reclusive billionaire. A denial would have made you look rejected, pathetic. I needed a better solution. He paused. I needed to understand who you'd become before I intervened. So you've been investigating me. Anger flared in her chest. I've been learning about you, he corrected. Your research on women's roles in ancient Greek commerce. Your volunteer work teaching archaeology to underprivileged children. Your refusal of a position at a prestigious British museum because they wouldn't return contested artifacts to their countries of origin. Olivia stared at him, unsettled by how much he knew. That's intrusive, perhaps, but I needed to be certain before I came here. Vincent's expression softened. Olivia, I've spent my life building walls to protect my privacy. The public sees only what I allow them to see. But you live your principles openly, regardless of the cost. That's remarkably rare. And expensive, apparently, she said bitterly. My career is in shambles. Vincent straightened. That's why I'm here. I have a proposal. I don't want your charity, she replied sharply. Good, I'm not offering charity. His eyes held a new intensity. I'm offering partnership. Partnership, Olivia repeated. My foundation is launching a new initiative authenticating privately held artifacts and facilitating their return to their countries of origin. We need someone with impeccable ethical standards and expertise in authentication. Someone whose passion isn't just for the artifacts themselves, but for what they represent to humanity. Olivia's mind raced. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you the directorship of the entire program. Vincent leaned forward. But first, I think we need to address the scandal together. How? By telling the truth. Not just about that night, but about why I noticed you in the first place. About the real reason I respect you. He hesitated, then added quietly, and perhaps about why I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that accidental moment in the dark. Something shifted in the atmosphere between them. For the first time since the incident, Olivia felt the weight on her shoulders lighten slightly. Why would you do this for me? She asked softly. Vincent's answer was simple. Because in a world where most people wear masks, you showed me what integrity looks like without one. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the last daylight as they sat across from each other, two strangers connected by an accident, now contemplating a deliberate choice to trust. Building bridges. The press conference was Olivia's idea. If we're going to change the narrative, she told Vincent, we need to face it directly. 2 weeks after his unexpected visit to her apartment, they stood side by side in the atrium of the Blackwood Foundation headquarters. Camera flashes punctuated the silence as journalists studied them with predatory interest. Thank you all for coming, Vincent began, his public persona firmly in place despite his discomfort with the spotlight. I'd like to introduce Dr. Olivia Reed, the new Director of Cultural Heritage and Repatriation at the Blackwood Foundation. Whispers rippled through the assembled press. Olivia stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Mr. Blackwood and I first met 7 years ago at an academic conference, long before the incident at the museum gala, she explained. The encounter that was so wildly misrepresented in the media was nothing more than an accident during a power outage. However, the professional respect between us is very real. A reporter raised her hand. So you're saying there's no romantic relationship? Vincent answered before Olivia could. We're saying that Dr. Reed's qualifications for this position are impeccable and have nothing to do with 3 seconds in a darkened museum. His tone left no room for argument. The program she'd be leading represents a $20 million commitment to returning culturally significant artifacts to their countries of origin. The announcement shifted the conversation exactly as they'd hoped. By evening, headlines focused on the groundbreaking initiative rather than imagined scandal. The museum board called an emergency meeting, suddenly eager to partner with the foundation now that Olivia was directing a multi-million-dollar program. Let them wait, Vincent suggested when she mentioned their overtures. They were working late in his office, reviewing potential candidates for her team. They discarded you without hesitation. Forgiveness isn't weakness, Olivia replied, pushing aside a portfolio. Besides, we'll need institutional partners. Vincent studied her across the table. Over the past month, their professional relationship had developed into something neither had anticipated: a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and unexpected compatibility. He found himself looking forward to their daily interactions, drawn to her intellectual curiosity and unflinching honesty. "You continue to surprise me, Dr. Reed," he said quietly. "Olivia," she corrected, meeting his gaze. "After all this, I think we're well past formalities." Something unspoken passed between them. Vincent cleared his throat. "Olivia, would you consider joining me for dinner tomorrow? Not to discuss work." Her smile carried a warmth that transformed her entire face. "I'd like that." Their first official date was at a small Greek restaurant in Astoria, Vincent's concession to her love of Mediterranean culture. As they shared mezz platters and discussed everything from ancient philosophy to modern technology, Olivia realized how comfortable she felt with him. The public perception of Vincent Blackwood as cold and aloof couldn't be further from the man across from her, whose eyes crinkled when he laughed and who listened to her as if every word mattered. Over the following months, their relationship evolved naturally despite the challenges of public scrutiny. They worked side by side during the day, building the repatriation program into something revolutionary, and spent evenings discovering each other beyond professional boundaries. Vincent found himself opening up about his childhood as the socially awkward son of academics, his retreat from public life after his company's success, and his fear that wealth had made genuine connection impossible. Olivia shared her struggles as a woman in academia, her parents' disappointment when she chose artifacts over a more lucrative career, and her unwavering belief that understanding our shared past was the key to a better future. Their first kiss, their real first kiss, happened not amid camera flashes or public spectacle, but on her small balcony under a full moon, 6 months after the scandal that brought them together. "I never expected you," Vincent whispered against her lips. Olivia's fingers traced the contour of his face. "Sometimes the most valuable discoveries are the ones we weren't looking for." A new chapter. 1 year after the fateful gala, Olivia stood on a mountainside in Peru, watching as a collection of pre-Incan artifacts was ceremonially returned to representatives of the indigenous community. Beside her, Vincent observed with quiet satisfaction as community elders explained the cultural significance of each piece to assembled children. "They'll grow up knowing their heritage," Olivia murmured, "not just reading about it in foreign museums." Vincent's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. 17 successful repatriations in 12 countries. "You've accomplished more in a year than most cultural programs do in a decade." The Foundation's work had indeed transformed the landscape of cultural heritage preservation. Under Olivia's leadership, they'd developed innovative authentication technologies, established ethical guidelines now adopted by museums worldwide, and created educational programs connecting communities with their reclaimed cultural treasures. More surprisingly, their relationship had flourished despite its unusual beginning. They moved between his penthouse and her apartment, finding balance between his need for privacy and her desire for normalcy. The media had eventually tired of them when no scandal materialized, instead occasionally featuring their work in more thoughtful pieces about cultural heritage. That evening, in their hotel suite overlooking the Andes, Vincent seemed uncharacteristically nervous as they watched the sunset paint the mountains in gold. "I've been thinking about legacies," he said suddenly, "what we leave behind." Olivia turned to him, curious. "Your technological innovations will outlive us both." "Technology becomes obsolete," he replied, "but what we're doing with the Foundation, returning people's cultural birthright that echoes through generations." He took her hands in his. "I've spent most of my life building walls and systems, Olivia, creating distance. Until you crashed into me, quite literally, and showed me a different way to exist in the world." From his pocket, he withdrew a small box containing not a typical diamond engagement ring, but an intricately designed gold band modeled after ancient Greek craftsmanship. "This isn't an artifact," he assured her with a smile. "It's newly made by an artisan we helped train in traditional techniques." "But the design, eternal return," Olivia whispered, recognizing the pattern. "The ancient belief that life moves not in a line but in cycles of renewal." Vincent nodded. "I can't imagine my life without your perspective, your courage, your heart. Will you marry me, Olivia?" Her answer came without hesitation. Yes. 6 months later, they married in a ceremony that honored both their backgrounds, his love of minimalist elegance and her passion for historical significance. The museum that had once suspended Olivia hosted their reception among the artifacts she had helped curate, a symbolic restoration of her professional standing on her vows. Olivia spoke of serendipity and second chances. "What appeared to be my greatest humiliation became the doorway to my greatest joy," she told Vincent as their guests looked on. "You saw me when I was invisible, valued truth when lies were easier, and loved me not despite my principles but because of them." Vincent, usually so reserved, didn't hide the emotion in his voice as he responded. "You taught me that real connections aren't threats to be defended against but treasures to be protected. Our accidental beginning led to the most intentional choice of my life, choosing you, every day, as my partner in everything that matters." As they moved among their guests later, Eleanor Whitfield, The museum director approached with congratulations. "You've changed how we approach our entire collection," she told Olivia. "Your work with the foundation has transformed the field. Sometimes it takes being knocked off course to find a better path," Olivia replied, sharing a meaningful glance with her husband. That night, as they danced under the glow of museum lights, Vincent held her close. "The headlines got it all wrong," he murmured. "How so?" Olivia asked, looking up at him. "They called our first meeting an accident, but I'm starting to believe it was inevitable, the moment when everything in my life finally started making sense." Olivia smiled, remembering how a split second in darkness had illuminated a path she never knew existed. Perhaps the best stories begin not with perfect plans, but with beautiful accidents that reveal what we truly value. Around them, ancient artifacts stood as silent witnesses to a timeless truth that human connection, not wealth or status or even scholarly achievement, remains our most precious cultural inheritance.